Picture this. It's the middle of August, 2026. The NBA has no games, no playoffs, no finals, confetti falling from the rafters. And yet, somehow, this might be the wildest week the Los Angeles Lakers have had all year. A four-time champion is being begged to come home by his own father. A former #1 overall pick is quietly training on the other side of the world, trying to fight his way back into the league. A 23-year-old star is sitting by his phone with no team, watching his old jersey number get taken by somebody else. And the son of the greatest player of his generation is caught in the middle of a question nobody wants to ask out loud. Does he stay, or does he go? If you think NBA off-seasons are boring, stick around, because what's happening in Los Angeles right now is one of the strangest, messiest, most emotional roster puzzles this league has seen in years. And it all starts with an empty chair where the king used to sit. For 8 seasons, LeBron James wore purple and gold. He came to Los Angeles promising a championship, and he delivered one, back in the strange bubble season when the world had shut down and basketball was the only thing that felt normal. Since then, he had become something more than a player to that franchise. He was the face of it. The reason cameras showed up. The reason casual fans tuned in on a random Tuesday in February. But this summer, that chapter closed. LeBron told the Lakers he would not be returning for the 2026-27 season. And soon after, the basketball world watched him sign with the Philadelphia 76ers, a 2-year deal worth $8 million, a number so small for a player of his stature that it practically screamed one message. This was never about the money. This was about something else. A new challenge. A new city. Maybe one last shot at glory somewhere nobody expected him to go. For Lakers fans, the news landed like a gut punch. Not because it was shocking that LeBron might eventually leave. Everyone knew that day was coming, someday. It was shocking because of how it happened, how fast the pieces started moving once he was gone, and because of the question that immediately followed him out the door. What happens to his son? Bronny James had spent 2 seasons wearing the same jersey as his father. It was a story that felt almost too good to be true, a father and son sharing an NBA court, something that had never happened in the history of the league. Cameras followed every warm-up, every high five, every quiet moment between plays. And now, with LeBron gone, all of that context vanished overnight. Bronny was no longer the son playing alongside his dad. He was just a 21-year-old guard on a rebuilding roster, trying to prove he belonged there on his own terms. The speculation started almost immediately. Would Bronny follow his father to Philadelphia? It seemed like the obvious next chapter, the kind of storybook ending fans love to imagine. Father and son, reunited in a new city, chasing one more run together. Reports even suggested that teams pursuing LeBron in free agency had quietly discussed what it would take to bring Bronny along too, almost like the two were a package deal nobody wanted to say out loud. But then came the twist. LeBron's own agent, Rich Paul, stepped in and shut that idea down. He made it clear, plainly and directly, that Bronny and his father were not a package deal. There was no plan, no agreement, no secret understanding that the son would simply follow the father across the country. Reporters close to the Lakers backed that up. Sources inside the organization described Bronny as well-liked in the locker room, a player who had built his own relationships and earned his own respect, separate from his last name. One insider went as far as to say the assumption that father and son were permanently linked going forward was simply false. Still, the trade rumors didn't stop. If anything, they multiplied. One proposal floated around had the Lakers sending Bronny to Philadelphia in a massive 4-team deal, the kind of complicated multi-team trade that only fans with spreadsheets truly understand, but one that would have finally delivered the fairy tale reunion. Another version of the same idea popped up just days later. A 3-team framework where the Lakers would get pieces back from both Chicago and Philadelphia while sending Bronny east to play for his father's new team. Yet another rumor swapped Philadelphia out entirely and put the Miami Heat in as the destination. A scenario built around Miami wanting a young, cheap contract to fill out their roster after making a blockbuster move of their own. None of these trades happened. Not one. And here's the thing that made this story even more interesting. According to people close to the situation, the Lakers were not eager to move on from Bronny at all. A Lakers beat reporter relayed comments suggesting the front office was, in his words, more than happy to keep Bronny James. They had drafted him. They had developed him. People inside the building genuinely liked having him around. It would take something real, something valuable in return, for the Lakers to even consider letting him go. So as the summer stretched on, Bronny stayed a Laker. His contract for the upcoming season was already fully guaranteed, a modest deal worth a little over $2 million, small enough that moving him wouldn't create major financial ripple effects either way. He was set to compete for playing time in a crowded backcourt, sharing minutes with the team's new floor general, a returning veteran wing, and a group of fresh faces the front office had brought in over the summer. For a young player entering his third season, it was, in a strange way, an opportunity. No more questions about playing time being tied to his father's presence. No more storylines about nepotism or connections. Just a chance to be evaluated purely on what he could do with a basketball in his hands. Whether that opportunity stays intact by the time the season tips off is still an open question. As of right now, nothing is settled. Rumors are still circling. Proposals are still being floated by reporters and analysts trying to guess what the front office might do next. But for the moment, Bronny James remains exactly where he started this offseason. A Laker, fighting quietly for his place, while his father begins an entirely different chapter 3,000 miles away. Now, if that story alone wasn't enough intrigue for one summer, the Lakers weren't done. Not even close. Because while everyone was watching the Bronny situation unfold, another storyline was quietly heating up, one involving a name every basketball fan already knows. A shooter so pure, so dangerous, that defenses used to chase him around screens like he was made of pure gravity. A four-time champion. One half of one of the most feared shooting duos the game has ever seen. Klay Thompson. Here's where the story gets interesting. 2 years earlier, Klay had made a decision that surprised a lot of people. After more than a decade wearing one uniform, he left to sign with the Dallas Mavericks, choosing to team up with a generational young superstar and chase one more championship somewhere new. For a while, it looked like it might work. But basketball, like life, doesn't always follow the script. The Maverick season didn't go the way anyone in Dallas hoped, and this offseason, whispers began that the front office was ready to move on from Klay entirely. And here's the part that makes this whole situation feel almost like fate. Klay Thompson didn't grow up just anywhere. He grew up in Los Angeles. His father, Michael Thompson, played for the Lakers back in the 1980s, winning 2 championships in that very uniform, and still works for the team today as part of their radio broadcast crew. Which means, this entire summer, there has been a very real, very human detail sitting quietly underneath all the trade rumors and salary cap breakdowns. Klay's own father has reportedly been trying to convince his son to come home. Multiple reports throughout the summer painted the same picture. The Lakers were interested. The Miami Heat were interested too. And Klay himself, according to insiders, would reportedly welcome the idea of finally playing for the franchise his father once starred for, the team he grew up watching as a kid. It's the kind of storyline that sounds like it was written for a movie. A son coming home to finish his career where it all started for his family. But wanting something and actually getting it done are two very different things in the NBA. Trades are complicated. They involve money, contracts, draft picks, and a dozen competing interests that have nothing to do with sentiment. And this trade had a problem. A big one. The Lakers didn't have the assets teams normally use to acquire a proven veteran shooter. No available first-round picks to offer outright. A roster already packed with 16 players under guaranteed contracts. Limited financial flexibility. It was, on paper, one of the hardest trades in the league to actually construct. That didn't stop reporters and fans from trying anyway. Throughout the summer, proposal after proposal got floated publicly, each one a little different, each one an attempt to solve the same impossible puzzle. One idea involved the Lakers sending out a package built around an expiring contract, some role players, and a future pick swap, bringing back not just Klay but another Dallas forward as well, essentially reshaping the wing rotation around their new franchise cornerstone in one enormous swing. Another version scaled things down, imagining a smaller, cleaner trade, just Klay for a single expiring contract and a bit of extra draft value. Something the Lakers could realistically pull off without gutting the roster they had just built. There was even a wilder idea, a 3-team blockbuster that pulled in a restricted free agent from the Clippers as the centerpiece asset used to pry Klay loose from Dallas. while a third team absorbed a couple of expiring salaries just to make the numbers work under the cap. This is a hypothetical proposal, reporters were careful to clarify, not something confirmed to be under real discussion between front offices. But it captured just how much creative energy the basketball world was pouring into trying to solve the Klay Thompson puzzle. And underneath all of it sat one consistent report from sources inside the league. The Mavericks did not want to negotiate a buyout. They wanted an actual trade, something that would bring value back in return, rather than simply releasing Klay and letting him sign wherever he wanted for nothing in exchange. That single detail mattered enormously, because it meant Klay's fate wasn't fully in his own hands. Even if he wanted to go home to Los Angeles more than anything, Dallas had to agree to send him there, and agree to a deal that made sense for their own rebuilding timeline. Prediction markets even got in on the speculation. Betting platforms tracking where Klay Thompson would play next season showed Los Angeles as the favorite, with Miami running a close second, and staying in Dallas trailing well behind both. It's a strange sign of the times that even betting markets have opinions on where a 36-year-old shooting guard should play basketball, but it reflects just how much buzz had built around this single storyline by the time August rolled around. So where does it stand right now? Unresolved. Genuinely, completely unresolved. As of the second week of August, no trade had been finalized. Klay Thompson remained a Dallas Maverick on paper, even as reports swirled that his time there was almost certainly ending. The betting favorite was Los Angeles. His own father was reportedly working the phones trying to make it happen emotionally, even if he had no actual say in the front office decision. And Lakers fans were left doing what fans do best in moments like this, refreshing their phones, waiting for a single push notification that could confirm or crush an entire summer's worth of hope. Now, let's shift the story again, because there's a third character in this off-season drama, and his situation might be the most dramatic of them all, built entirely around a single, small, almost invisible detail. A jersey number. Jonathan Kuminga entered the league as a lottery pick, taken 7th overall, a young forward with explosive athleticism and obvious untapped potential. He spent years developing with Golden State, showing flashes of brilliance mixed with inconsistency, the kind of talent that makes front offices simultaneously excited and frustrated. Eventually, he was traded away from the only franchise he had ever known, landing with the Atlanta Hawks partway through last season. It was a fresh start, a chance to prove himself somewhere new, without the shadow of expectations that come from being drafted by a dynasty. But here's where things get complicated. This summer, Atlanta made a decision that shocked absolutely nobody who had watched Kuminga's inconsistent stretches, but still stung anyway. They declined his team option for the upcoming season, worth roughly $24 million, effectively cutting ties and sending him into unrestricted free agency. Just like that, one of the more talented young forwards in the league was on the open market, with no team and no clear landing spot. Teams circled almost immediately. The Lakers were mentioned as suitors. The Cleveland Cavaliers, too. Reports throughout July described the Lakers making Kuminga a genuine off-season priority, exploring sign and trade scenarios and other creative roster-building options to bring him in and pair him with their new franchise centerpiece. It made sense on paper. A 23-year-old two-way talent, athletic, still improving, exactly the kind of player a retooling roster wants to gamble on. But weeks turned into more weeks, and nothing got finalized. Kuminga remained unsigned, floating in that strange purgatory every NBA free agent fears, watching training camp get closer and closer on the calendar with no contract to show for the summer. And then, almost quietly, a tiny detail emerged that reignited the entire conversation. It had nothing to do with contracts or trade packages. It was about a jersey number. The Hawks had signed a new guard this offseason, a defensive-minded veteran who had spent recent seasons wearing the number 5. But another Atlanta player already had that number locked down, so the new addition needed to switch. And what number did he choose instead? 0. The exact number Jonathan Kuminga had worn during his short stint with the Hawks the previous season. Now, on the surface, that might sound like nothing. Jersey numbers get recycled all the time in professional sports. But in the world of NBA insiders and reporters who obsessively track every tiny signal for hints about a player's future, this felt like something bigger. Because unwritten locker room etiquette usually says you don't take a number that still technically belongs to somebody the team expects to return. Handing that number to someone else felt, to many who cover the team closely, like a quiet signal that the Hawks didn't expect Kuminga to be back in Atlanta uniform anytime soon. To be fair, reporters covering the story were careful to note that this wasn't confirmation of anything. A jersey number swap isn't a press release. It isn't an official statement from the front office. As one report put it plainly, this isn't a 100% confirmation that Kuminga is not returning to the team. There was even a small wrinkle buried in the story, a reminder that Kuminga himself had worn a different number, 00, back during his very first season in the league, before switching. Which meant, technically, if he ever did return to Atlanta, he could simply go back to his original number and let the new numerical situation resolve itself without any drama at all. Still, the timing mattered. With training camps approaching in just a matter of weeks, and one of the more talented available free agents still sitting unsigned, every tiny signal gets magnified by fans and reporters desperate for something, anything, that hints at where the dominoes might fall next. And there's a very practical piece of context that made this signal feel more significant than it otherwise might have. Atlanta's roster at the time was sitting on 17 standard contracts. League rules require teams to trim down to 15 before the regular season begins. That means somebody currently on Atlanta's roster is not making the final cut, whether by trade, waiver, or simply not re-signing at all. It's the kind of quiet roster math that often ends up mattering just as much as any trade rumor. So where does that leave Jonathan Kuminga as of right now? Unsigned, uncommitted, linked to multiple teams, including a Lakers franchise that has spent the entire summer aggressively remaking its roster around a new foundation. Watching his old number get worn by somebody else in a city he might never return to. It's the kind of situation that captures everything strange and human about NBA free agency. Real careers, real families, real decisions, all playing out slowly, in public, while millions of strangers online debate what a jersey number swap might or might not mean. And just when you think this off-season couldn't possibly add one more storyline, there's a fourth character stepping quietly back into the spotlight. Someone whose name alone brings back a flood of memories, some triumphant, some painful, and whose comeback attempt right now is one of the most talked about redemption arcs in recent NBA history. Ben Simmons was once the number 1 overall pick in the entire draft. A generational talent by measurements alone, 6'9", built like a small forward but able to run an offense like a point guard, a defensive menace who could guard multiple positions at an elite level. Early in his career, he looked every bit like a future superstar, making multiple all-star teams, anchoring elite defenses, doing things on a basketball court that players his size simply aren't supposed to be able to do. But his career took a difficult turn. Injuries piled up. Confidence issues followed. A very public and painful split from his original franchise turned into one of the more talked-about sagas in recent league history. He bounced to a new team, showed only flashes of his former self, and eventually found himself out of the league entirely, sitting out the entire 2025-26 season by choice, unsigned, unwanted, and largely written off by a basketball world that had once considered him a can't-miss superstar. Now, at 30 years old, Simmons is trying to write a different ending. This month, he's been participating in a mini-camp for the Australian men's national basketball team, taking place all the way on the other side of the world in Melbourne. It's not an NBA event. It's not even technically required. According to reports, Simmons is paying his own way out of pocket just to be there, using the camp as a stage to show teams watching from a distance that his body has healed, that his athleticism has returned, that he still has something left to offer at the highest level of the sport. And people are watching. Multiple reports throughout the past week described several NBA franchises expressing real interest, monitoring his workouts, gathering information, weighing whether the version of Ben Simmons showing up in Melbourne looks anything like the all-star defender who once terrorized opposing offenses. To lower the risk for any interested team, his side has reportedly made something clear. Simmons is fully open to signing for the veteran's minimum. No max contract demands. No leverage games. Just an opportunity to prove himself again, on almost any team willing to take the chance. One insider went further, revealing that Simmons already has a non-guaranteed camp invite on the table from a team out west, though the exact team wasn't named publicly. And that's where the Lakers enter the picture once again, because among the teams reportedly showing interest, Los Angeles keeps coming up. It's not hard to see why. A roster built increasingly around elite playmaking, in need of length, defense, and versatility on the wing. A player like Simmons, even a diminished version of his peak self, checks a lot of boxes a team like that desperately needs. But not everyone thinks it's a slam dunk decision. Some analysts covering the Lakers closely have actually urged caution, suggesting the front office wait things out rather than rush into a commitment. The argument goes something like this. Simmons, at his absolute best, healthy and confident, could be a difference-making piece for almost any contender in the league. His defense, his playmaking, his downhill physicality, all things that translate incredibly well next to ball-dominant offensive stars. But his recent history is complicated enough that betting on him too early, before seeing real, competitive minutes against professional talent, carries genuine risk. As of this very moment, nothing has been signed. No contract. No press conference. Just a 30-year-old former #1 pick, training on the other side of the planet, trying to prove to anyone still paying attention that his story isn't finished yet. Whether that story's next chapter gets written in Los Angeles, somewhere else entirely, or nowhere at all, is a question that remains completely open. So take a step back for a second, and look at everything happening in this one single Lakers offseason all at once. A franchise legend who left after 8 seasons, walking away from the only NBA home most fans had ever known him to have, choosing to start over on the opposite coast for a fraction of what he could have earned elsewhere. His son, caught in an identity crisis nobody asked for, fending off trade rumors and reunion fantasies while quietly trying to build his own basketball career, separate from a legendary last name. A 4-time champion sharpshooter, stuck in a kind of limbo, wanted by his childhood team, pushed by his own father, blocked only by the cold, unemotional math of the NBA's salary cap rules. A former lottery pick, unsigned and unwanted by his most recent team, watching his old jersey number handed to somebody else in what might be a quiet goodbye nobody officially announced. And a former #1 overall pick, half a world away, sweating through a national team practice, paying his own expenses, just praying for one more real chance at redemption. None of these stories are finished. Not one of them has a confirmed ending yet. As of today, LeBron has left, but where Bronny ultimately plays this coming season remains genuinely uncertain. Klay Thompson remains, at least on paper, a Dallas Maverick, even as betting markets and league insiders overwhelmingly expect that to change before opening night. Jonathan Kuminga remains a free agent with no team, watching the clock tick down toward training camp deadlines that will eventually force somebody's hand. And Ben Simmons remains unsigned, his fate resting on workouts happening thousands of miles from any NBA arena. What makes this moment in Lakers history so fascinating isn't that any single trade or signing has already happened. It's that so many major storylines are colliding at the exact same time, all connected loosely to one franchise trying to figure out who it wants to be in a world without the player who defined it for nearly a decade. Every jersey number, every quiet comment from an agent, every hypothetical trade proposal floated online, every workout video from a gym in Melbourne, all of it becomes a clue in a much bigger mystery that won't fully resolve until players actually start stepping onto the court this fall. And that's really what makes NBA off-seasons so strangely addictive to follow. It's not the box scores or the highlight plays. It's the human drama sitting quietly underneath every headline. A father trying to bring his son home. A young player fighting to be seen as more than somebody else's name. A veteran chasing one more real chance at proving the doubters wrong. Real people making real decisions, while millions of strangers online debate every tiny signal, trying to guess what happens next before it actually does. So here's where things stand as the calendar creeps closer to training camp. Nothing is confirmed. Everything is still moving. And somewhere between a phone call that hasn't happened yet, a trade that hasn't been finalized, and a jersey number that hasn't been officially reassigned for good, the next chapter of this Lakers offseason is still being written in real time. All anyone can do now is wait, watch, and see which one of these storylines breaks first.